Hi, I'm Old Sneelock. Welcome to another episode of Old Sneelock's Workshop. If you've been watching me work on the Swan Beam Drilling Machine, you also watch me run the South Bend Lathe quite a bit. Well, it's kind of a pain in the butt. There's a couple of things about it that are old tools that really cramp my style. I was trained on a machine back in the 70s, and it's not the latest. Wasn't until the 80s and 90s that I ran CNCs. But the one that I had as a tool maker had a far different kind of tool holder. This is called a lantern tool holder. You find these on machines from the early days right on up through the 40s and 50s. If you look at it, it looks vaguely like a lantern. But as you can see, this one wasn't exactly built for this machine. This machine would take a smaller lantern. But somebody cut this down and made it fit, and it's what I had, so it's what I used. But just because it was what I had and it's what I used doesn't mean that it's what I want. What I was looking for was something called a piston quick change tool post. Well, actually I was looking for a wedge type, but the wedge type's more expensive. Having a functioning threading lathe is a cool thing. The lantern tool post was kind of an annoyance, but it wasn't enough to make me not use the machine. And it was what I had, so that's what I did. But I kept watching on the internet, and I found that there was a company called H&H Industrial Products Incorporated out of Chino, California. They were selling on eBay a AXA piston type tool post. Sometimes called an Aloris type. Cool little device. There's two kinds. There's the wedge type and the piston type. The wedge type is considered better, sturdier, doesn't require as much force to lock it. This one uses pistons and a cam inside the block, and as you rotate this arm around, you can see the pistons moving in and out. First one and then the other. Now this by itself is a cool thing, nice to have, but without a tool holder it's not worth much. Back when I bought the South Bend lathe, I wanted a knurling tool. I tried to find one. I wanted to get one on an Armstrong tool holder, but they were scarce as hen's teeth. I did manage to find an AXA knurling tool online for 20 bucks, and I thought, well, if nothing else, I can cobble it up and make it work. Then the project that I was going to be using the knurling tool for didn't need to do. So this sat in a box on the shelf for quite a while. Now I had a tool post holder and a knurling tool. The knurling tool also has this little notch in it that you can set a carbide tool in, lock it down with the set screws. The design of the device lets you set the height of the cutting edge, and with different diameter tools that cutting height changes, because the tool is always going to sit in the bottom, but the top of the carbide is going to vary up and down depending upon the thickness of the tool. So with this quick purchase of $39, I now became part of the at least the 1950s. So now I had a tool holder and a tool post. But at the same time, while I was online, I looked, and lo and behold, huge sum of 13 bucks, I could purchase another tool holder. This one is a Hess, and I purchased that from All Industrial Tool Supply, and they're out of Huntington Beach, California. Surprise, surprise, it was made in China, as are most of the inexpensive things on eBay these days. This is a 250-102-XL. The XL means it has a bigger gap in here and can handle a larger tool, which may not seem like much, but to me that was kind of important. That will handle up to 1/2-inch carbide. Excuse me, that will handle it up to 5/8 carbide. And I happen to own a batch of 1/2-inch tools. So I need to sharpen these buggers up because they're junkers from my days as a machinist. And they sat in a box in a garage for a long, long time. They got kind of dirty and rusty, but carbide doesn't rust away. And these tools are going to probably last me from the next 20 years, considering the amount that I use them. So now, not only do I have a knurling tool and a tool holder, I now have one that I can use my big tools on. And because sometimes you want to just have a threading tool rigged up and ready to go, I bought this one, which is a Hess 250-101. This one will handle the 1/2-inch. It won't take the 5/8, but I don't have any 5/8 right now. So now I have 3 tool holders. One I can use to set up for a threading gauge, or one of them I can use to set up for a threading tool. Since this has bases for tools on either end, I can have a threading tool, a roughing tool, a left hand and a right hand tool, and perhaps a parting tool mounted in one of them. As time goes on, I'm going to keep my eyes open, see if I can buy a parting tool mount for this AXA. I'm sure that I can get one on the internet sometime. Then I'll have 4 tool holders, which is basically the full set. So now all I need to do is mount this on the south bend, which sounds fairly simple. This key is supposed to just slide right into the compound. This is for a lathe anywhere from 6 inches on up to 12-inch swing. So let's set it up and see what it takes to make it work. Well, I can see there's a problem already. This T-nut, which came with the AXA tool post holder, is too big to go into the compound slot. Because this tool post is designed to go on anything from a 6-inch to a 12-inch, I assume they sell it one for a 6-inch, but they ship it for a 12-inch because if you want to, you can always cut this down and make it small enough to fit into the smaller slots. One of the things that I did when I bought the lathe was I wanted to make tooling for it. I wanted to make a faceplate. So I cast this up out of aluminum. I was able to turn it between centers, but I couldn't thread the center of the bore. I couldn't thread the bore for the spindle. So I made a boring tool. Boring tool I made mounts on the compound and is locked down with a bolt and a nut, just very similar to the AXA. The design of the boring bar holder, the way the boring bar is held in place, I made a half circle through this 1/2 inch bolt so that when I have the bolt in the hole and slide the boring bar through, the boring bar slides through that gap. And when I tighten up the nut, that half circle hole in the bolt is drawn over and locks down the boring bar. And I made the same kind of thing on the vertical, so I can adjust this up and down and in and out. But the cool thing for this project is I also made a T-nut, because just like the AXA, this surface goes down and locks onto the sides of the compound slide and locks this center this center shaft in place. Then if I loosen this bolt, I can raise or lower the bore. If I loosen this nut, I can raise or lower the boring tool on that shaft. So what does that do for me today? Well, with that T-nut in there and a washer on the top, I can lock down that tool post. And it's solid enough I can rock the bench back and forth. I think I need a shim underneath this washer though. That washer's just big enough to cover over and rub on that cam. So let's see if I can find a washer that'll let me get away with that. Oh, perfect. Now I have clearance for that to move. It looks like I'm ready to rock and roll. Ha! We're good. Following the same method, all I do is make that blade stand straight up and down, and lock that. And my tool is set up and ready to cut. Now if I want to stop the cut, change the cutter. All I have to do adjust my tool, lock it down. With it locked down, lock that nut right there. And I'm set up to cut with another tool. Now, this tool happens to be dull. So I can sharpen that one, or I can just drop this one right back in, and with that, keep her locked down. Close the cam up, move that piston. We're ready to go. So now making this shaft would have been a lot easier with this tool, because I wouldn't have had to fiddle around with the number of tools that I had getting ready to make this thing work. But wishes were horses, beggars would ride.
Old Sneelock here again. Thanks for watching. Have you subscribed yet? If you enjoyed the video, please take a moment and click the thumbs up.